My name is Leah Porter, and if you believe that everything in life comes at a price, know that I paid mine. With blood, with fear, and with something I didn't even know was at stake. My soul. I was 22 years old when it started. I lived in Jacksonville, Florida, studying nutrition at a state university and trying to balance 2 jobs with mandatory internships. My father had already passed away, and my mother was too ill to help me with anything beyond prayers. I lost my job at a small practice when they moved to another city, and between rent, tuition, and basic expenses, I started to sink. I had nowhere to turn. I slept poorly, cried a lot, and considered dropping out of school. That's when my best friend Tasha told me about Clarice. Clarice was an aesthetic student, stunning, with expensive clothes, perfect hair, always arriving in luxury cars, and everyone knew why. She was what they call a sugar baby nowadays. But let's be honest, she sold companionship, her body to older, wealthy, and emotionally broken men. Leah Tasha said, "Before you judge me, just think about it. You're on the verge of collapse. Clarice can introduce you to someone. It's just for a while, just until you get back on your feet. And these guys pay a lot." At first, I was horrified. The idea of selling my body made me nauseous. But you know what's worse than that? Seeing the bank notification that you're overdrawn while your tuition bill arrives. I ended up giving in. Clarice explained everything to me. She asked for photos, some in dresses, others in lingerie, and some ... completely naked. She said she would include me in the catalogue of a select group. In return, she wanted a commission if I was chosen. I hesitated, ... but I did it. 2 days later, I received an invitation for coffee. A man named Daniel Royce wanted to meet me. 55 years old, widower, CEO of an investment firm. According to Clarice, one of the best. I arrived nervous. But when Daniel showed up, with his graying hair, impeccable suit, and that refined southern accent, I was surprised. He was elegant, articulate, and the way he looked at me made me feel desired, but not in a dirty way. At least, not at that moment. We talked, we laughed. He took me to buy a dress, and then we had dinner at a seaside restaurant. At night, he took me to a luxurious apartment he kept just for meetings. And yes, we slept together, tenderly, gently, with a calmness that made me believe that maybe, just maybe, ... I had gotten lucky. The next morning, he gave me an envelope with $2,000. He said he wanted to see me again. He said I was special, and at that moment, I wished it were true. In the following months, Daniel and I met frequently. On Tuesdays, on Saturdays, he paid for everything. He bought clothes, took care of me, and worst of all, he listened to me. Really listened. I started to fall in love, even though I knew I shouldn't. During a trip to Georgia, he took me to a deserted beach and, under the orange sky of the sunset, kissed me with a sweetness that almost made me cry. I thought he was going to propose, but instead, he handed me the keys to an apartment. A gift, I smiled, but inside, I broke. He would never see me as someone he would build a life with. I was just the refuge, the escape, the fun, and worse. He soon replaced me. One day, I saw Daniel park his black Mustang in front of the university. I thought it was for me, but he was there to pick up Emily, a colleague of mine, pretty, young, naive, exactly as I was. That destroyed me. I cried for days. I refused the money. I ignored the messages, until Clarice told me something that would change everything. "Do you want him back?" Do you want him to never look at another woman again? There's a way, but there's no going back, Leah. It was witchcraft, a love spell, a spell to bind Daniel's heart to mine forever. At the time, I laughed. But that night, I cried myself to sleep with the witch's slip of paper clutched in my hand. And the next day, I went to her. The witch's house was in Middleburg, an hour from Jacksonville, in the middle of nowhere. It was an old 2-story house, covered in dry vines, with a crooked porch that creaked under my feet. The house number was scratched out on the mailbox, and the only indication that someone lived there was the sound of wind chimes and the sickening smell of burning herbs. Her name was Mama Joe, a dark-skinned woman with deep eyes and long fingers like those of a spider. When I opened the door, she already knew my name. "You came for the man," she said, "but you want much more than that, don't you?" I was silent. Love, revenge, control. It all looks the same when the heart is hurting. She asked me for photos, clothes, anything that had belonged to Daniel. I brought everything I could. A t-shirt he left in my apartment, a sweaty sock, disgusting, I know, a photo we took secretly in a restaurant. Do you understand that once it's done, there's no going back? She asked. This kind of love spell isn't like the ones in soap operas. This is a blood binding. He will stick to you like death itself. I should have run, but I nodded. I'll do anything, I said. I just want him back. I just want him to love me as he said he did. Mama Joe prepared everything with frightening speed. She took a live dove from a cage and, without hesitation, slit its throat with a curved razor, collecting the still warm blood in a ceramic bowl. Then she opened the animal, filled the body with pieces of our clothes and the photos of our faces glued together. She poured the blood over the mixture and whispered words that seemed to burn the air. She closed everything with red thread and placed it inside a handmade box. You will bury this in a cemetery. It has to be between 2:45 and 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when the world is vulnerable. What you put in the ground at that time sprouts in people's hearts. And then you wait. But know this, he will come back, but not as before. I followed the instructions. I buried the box in an abandoned corner of the municipal cemetery, between 2 cracked and moss-covered tombs. I didn't feel fear. I felt power. 3 weeks later, Daniel appeared. Out of nowhere, a card under my door. "I'll be waiting for you at the coffee shop where we met. Today, 5 p.m. D." My heart leaped. I went. I dressed up like never before. And when I saw him, he was different. The suit was impeccable. The smile was the same. But the look was no longer the same as before. It was empty, as if something guiding him was behind his eyes. We talked, we laughed. He took me to the same restaurant, said he was wrong, that he loved me, that he missed my smell, my voice, my laughter, and finally, ... he got down on one knee, with a ring. The same ring I thought he would give me that night on the beach. I said yes, and we got married a month later, in an intimate ceremony. Just our parents and some of his friends. Nothing seemed real, but everything was too perfect to be questioned. We moved to his house, a mansion in St. Augustine. I finally had everything I had dreamed of, but in that house, something began to rot. Daniel went from sweet to obsessed. He installed cameras. He took away my old cell phone. He hired security guards for my protection. He fired a maid because she looked at me too much. At night, he was tenderness and passion. During the day, he was surveillance, jealousy, paranoia. And when I refused to do something, he would shout, push me, whisper nonsense in my ear. Sometimes, words in a language I didn't understand. Sometimes voices that weren't just his. In our first fight, he punched the wall until he broke his hand. In the second, he pulled me by the hair and locked me in the room for 2 hours. He said it was for my protection, that the world out there wanted to steal me from him. But what scared me the most was how natural this became for me. I had asked for it, and the worst was yet to come. The mansion in St. Augustine was a work of art, stone columns, curved staircases, large windows, and mahogany furniture that seemed to have come from a European luxury catalogue. But inside, it was a cell. Daniel, once affectionate and seductive, became an obsessive watcher. He installed internal locks on the doors. He said it was for security. He forbade me to go out alone, even if it was to the corner store. The windows in my room had sensors. The garden had cameras with facial recognition, and he gave me clothes, food, jewelry, but never freedom. In the beginning, I tried to talk. Danny, I just want to be able to go to the pharmacy, walk a little, breathe. He would smile. Love, the world is cruel. I just want to protect you. You're mine. You always will be. And then he would hug me. Cry sometimes. But soon after, he would watch me again. He had an obsession with touch. He needed to sleep glued to me. Sometimes, I woke up with him stroking my face, with his eyes open in the dark, just looking at me. Other times, I woke up with him calling me another name, a name that wasn't mine. Elise, He would murmur, "You came back to me, Elise, who is Elise?" But he always denied it. "Nothing, Leah, it's just a dream." Gradually, the dreams turned into nightmares. Daniel became increasingly aggressive during sex. He held me tightly. He bit me. He marked me. And when I asked him to stop, he seemed even more excited. One night, he choked me until I passed out. I woke up hours later, naked, covered in bruises. There was blood on the sheet. Daniel was lying next to me, as if nothing had happened. "You sleep so deeply, Leah. I'm glad you trust me so much." That night, I knew he could kill me, and still rock me in his arms and say he loved me. But what convinced me to run happened on our first wedding anniversary. He took me to an expensive restaurant in downtown Jacksonville. Everything was perfect. The lights, the wine, the food. I tried to smile, to feign normalcy. I was waiting for a chance to escape. I knew he would go to the bathroom at some point. He always did when he drank. I waited. When he got up, I ran. I went to the kitchen. I desperately asked one of the chefs for help. I said my life was in danger. I showed my bruised wrists. The chef hesitated, but took me to the service exit. One of the house security guards who already knew me helped me get a taxi. He looked me in the eyes and said, "He's not the same anymore. I don't want to be complicit in this." I went straight to Tasha's house, my college friend. I explained everything. I cried. I asked to stay hidden there. But Daniel found me. Not physically, yet. He called me 47 times that night. He sent messages, then audios, all with a slurred voice, crying, saying he loved me, that he couldn't live without me. At 3:37 in the morning, he sent the last message, "If you don't come back, I'll leave forever." And then, silence. For the first time in months, he disappeared. But not for long. The next day, I received a call from the St. Augustine police. "Mrs. Leah Royce." "Yes, it's me. We need you to come to your former residence. Your husband has been found, dead." When the officers took me back to the mansion, I felt my whole body tremble. The facade was the same, majestic impeccably, but on the inside, the smell was wrong. Dampness, spilled wine, gunpowder. In the room where I spent so many nights, I found Daniel, lying on the bed, wearing the same blazer from the night before, his mouth, completely blown apart by a gunshot. The wall behind him painted dark red, the blood already coagulated on the carpet, the expression on his face almost calm, as if he had fallen asleep with one last thought, and decided not to wake up anymore. The police told me they found the body thanks to the house's monitoring system. One of the cameras noticed that he hadn't moved for more than 8 hours. The report said it was suicide, but what no one knew, not even the police, was that all of this was my fault. I was the one who made the pact. I was the one who sought out the woman in Tampa, known only as Mother Vale. A woman with grey eyes, hair down to her feet, who lived in a house full of candles, black cats, and symbols carved into the walls. "You want him to love you forever?" she asked, as she dripped chicken blood over a blue candle. "Yes," I said, "but I also want him to feel my absence if he leaves me." She smiled. "Then we will make a bond with return, a thread that will never be cut. Just don't say later that you weren't warned." She gave me a small wooden box. Inside, a doll made with strands of Daniel's hair, some of my blood on soaked cotton, and a small wax heart. "Bury this doll in a place that belongs to both of you. What she feels, he will feel. What you want, he will desire. But if he dies with the bond intact, he will return." I thought it was just ritual, symbolism. I never really believed it. But now, with Daniel dead and that calm look, even with his face disfigured, something inside me knew he would come back. I went back to live with my parents for a while. Daniel's will left me everything: the house, the stocks, the car. He had done it weeks before he died. I felt guilty, suffocated by the inheritance. But I accepted. Going back to the mansion would be difficult, but it was the only option I had left. I shouldn't have done it. On the first night back, I heard footsteps in the hallway. On the second, the mirrors started to fog up on their own. In the center of them, the silhouette of Daniel appeared. On the third night, I woke up with the feeling of someone lying on top of me. Warm breath on my neck, hands touching me with sickly affection. And then, his voice: "You called me. You wanted me. Now you're going to have me. Forever," I screamed. I turned on the lights. Nothing but the sheet was stained with blood. And the most horrible thing, it wasn't mine. I went down to the basement, the place where Daniel kept his art collection. And there, on the last shelf, was the wooden box that I buried months before, open and empty. The doll, had come home too. What started as a game of control and desire ended as an endless nightmare. The morning after that last night, I found the doll at the foot of my bed, lying down as if it had slept there. The small wax heart was now pulsing. Yes, pulsing, as if it were alive, as if it beat along with mine. I went to Mother Vale again. She didn't seem surprised. She just served a tea that smelled like iron and looked at me as if she knew exactly what I was going to say. "You brought him back," I whispered, almost breathless. "But he is not the same anymore." She closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. "Because you didn't ask for love. You asked for possession. Real love requires freedom. You used magic to kidnap a man's soul. And when he died, the soul didn't descend. It stayed, trapped. And now, he is just an echo, a bodiless obsession, but still with desire. She handed me a black dagger, ancient, with inscriptions in Latin on the sides. The handle smelled of earth and salt, and she said, "There is only one way to break a bond that was made with blood, sex, and death. It is by returning everything he gave you. Every gift, every drop of blood, every piece of your intimacy. Everything needs to be burned. Everything ... except you. And if I don't do it..." Mother Vale was silent for a moment. "Then," she answered, "then he will take it back, with his own hands." That night, back at the mansion, I did what she told me to do. I took everything: clothes, photos, the engagement ring, the letters, the pillow he slept on. I threw everything into a pyre in the garden and set it on fire. But something wouldn't burn. The doll, it refused to burn. I could swear she was crying, that the heart inside her was beating faster, and that's when he appeared. Daniel, on the balcony, wearing the same clothes from the night of his suicide, without injuries, without a voice, but with his eyes full of love and hate. He walked to me, he hugged me, and whispered in my ear, "You promised forever, and forever is now." I felt his hands squeeze my body like claws. The air became heavy. My skin burned under his touch. I screamed, but no one could hear me. At that moment, I realized that there was no escape, that the spell not only bound Daniel to me, but bound my soul to his. The morning after, the neighbors saw the smoke. They called the fire department. When they entered the mansion, they found the garden overturned. Ashes, burnt objects, signs of a struggle, but me missing. To this day, no one knows what happened to me. Some say I fled, others that I went mad and hid from everything. But if you enter that house now, you will see lights on where there is no electricity. You will hear footsteps in the hallways where there is no one. And if you enter the master bedroom, you will find 2 wine glasses and the doll of hair and wax on the bed. The heart is still pulsing, because Daniel took me back, and now we are one, bound for eternity.